Okay, have a seat. Have a seat, everybody. About to start. Starting the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee meeting at 5:31 p.m. And start off with a roll call. If you call the roll, Becky.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, we'll start with Chair Weltman. Okay. Vice Chair Kanahana. Thank you. Tova Callender. Thank you. Everett Dowling. No. Lehua Harusten Hapoka. Okay, thank you. Lehua is excused. Vernon Kalanikau. There you are. Okay. Randall Leach. Here. Present. Mike Moran. Thank you. Cody Nemeth. There you are. Okay. Wayne Nishiki. Thank you. Kyoki Feltzer. There you are. Jennifer Sullivan. Thank you. And Brian Ward. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we do have quorum. I'd like to recognize Corporation Counsel Michael Hopper will be joining us for a session a little bit later. So we talked a little bit about the order of things, and Council is willing to wait until after the presentation and questions to the presenter. Vivina mai na lava ki kumike o dado a o kai o no ka papa o dada na Maui tema. Vivina mai na hoi e ka poe o ke ena o dada o ke kalame o Maui. Me ka dahu dahu o Maui ia. Ina na ka ko i ki ia ia hine ke kai ho i ke yangi ko pona ana i ka vai i ki mai ai. Na hope e holungu o kako i kuka i pili ano i na ikama puli tele, kamena i kamahana, no ka lore ano ki aniao me na po ino i ke ole na hoi, i la a me ka po ino ahi. So there will be public testimony after the presentation, and so I would like to, and it will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. And the testimony should be limited to those questions, to the agenda items. So I would like to welcome Eva Blumenstein for the Department of Water Supply.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. I'm asked to do a very, very brief 5-minute presentation, and I understand you have reviewed the presentation they did at South Maui Town Hall. I think that was earlier in the fall. So just want to touch on the importance of integrating land use and water planning, and as you know, you are South Mauians, you're in a very dry microclimate and has a huge impact on water resource use and the quality of water resources in the region. It's really important to distinguish the difference between water infrastructure and water source. Our water, county water code, we have to apply it in a manner so it conforms to the general plan. But the Maui Island Plan growth areas didn't really consider water resources. It was really the growth areas were based on many factors considering available infrastructure. So land use impact on the water resource and vice versa. The community could support policies that have a beneficial impact on water resources, such as groundwater recharge, both in terms of demand, the type of landscaping, and the type of irrigation practices that you favor, things like green infrastructure, pervious surfaces that would improve recharge of groundwater. The type of development that you favor has an impact on the efficiency of water use. Smaller lots, higher density, have a tendency to use less potable water for irrigation than larger lots, single-family home development, you probably know. So supporting more climate-appropriate landscaping, xeriscaping for this microclimate could have a huge impact on water use efficiency. Also, there may be type of water uses that the community favors, such as agriculture or affordable housing and whatnot, and they may not necessarily match the public trust, protected public trust uses that have been defined by this court in the state. So, for example, if you are truly in a water shortage situation, then there are certain uses that should have priority, such as domestic needs over private commercial uses or agriculture. Having private systems is obviously necessary in certain regions, but you want to support water use strategies that are in the adopted water use development plan, because that is what's supporting the planned land use, and prioritize capital improvement program and funds to develop those resource strategies. If we go a different direction, then that may sometimes backfire, so you have sprawl or development that is supported by privately funded water systems and resources. So I had this slide at the town hall meeting, just a brief synopsis of what the water use development plan. The plan was adopted by council in February 2022, proposes specifically for South Maui. We know that we need roughly 8 million gallons a day additional source to meet projected demand through year 2035. We know that we do have limited regional resources for South Maui. The underlying aquifers here tend to have thinner freshwater lands. Water is quite brackish along the coast. There are really no surface water resources to speak of. Surface water in Wailuku aquifer sector is limited by adopted in-stream flow standards, and it's also a designated surface water management area, so water use permit allocations are needed for any additional use from there. The EO aquifer, which is the primary source serving Central and South Maui, has been kind of the workhorse for the last 20 years, but we really need to reduce pressure and pumpage from that aquifer in the face of climate change and changing uses in that region. We have a pretty aggressive conservation program that we'd like to take further, that definitely can help tamper demand, and it can delay the need to develop source, but it can't substitute the need for new source. Yeah, so some of the other strategies to support plant growth for South Maui, continue improving pump distribution throughout EO and Waihe aquifers, meaning that there's a limit, of course, established by sustainable yield, but even within sustainable yield, you want to maintain a buffer and make sure that you really optimize pumpage to make that resource last in a responsible way. And as new wells go in as well, that those are guided by updated groundwater models that consider changes in groundwater recharge and climate change. So the primary resource strategy to support plant growth through year 2035 is to continue exploring East Maui well development, guided by hydrologic studies, and also subject to East Maui consent decree. There's several criteria that need to be met in order to pursue that strategy. I just have the links there to the Water Resources Division subsite and the adopted ordinance, the Maui Island Water Use and Development Plan. That's the link below. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions from the members, the presenter? Vernon?
Question, just for clarification. So, South Maui received water from both Iao and Waihehu? Or Waihehu?
Yes, the central system is a mix of groundwater from Iao and Waihe aquifers and subsurface water as well from Wailuka River. Most of the source that goes to South Maui through a large 36-inch transmission line come from Waihe aquifer, but it can be backed. The system sources can back up each other, so they can be you can be serviced by sources only in the aquifer at times.
Thank you.
Cody?
Aloha. So, one thing that I'm thinking about is how you're talking about cutting back the water, you know, in times of maybe drought or something like that. I'm wondering where's the priority in the water when you're talking about like Wailea compared to more residential areas? And you know, there's a lot of talk about like, you know, the hotels and will always kind of have their water, you know, and how does prioritizing the water deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you probably all seen there's been water shortage declarations for Upcountry and for West Maui recently, since June of 2022. There's just been a couple of voluntary requests for Central Maui, or Central System that serves South Maui and Wailea. Partly because those systems are completely disconnected, so Central Maui, even if we have available source, can't back up Upcountry when we're in a shortage there. So those shortage declarations has kind of been disconnected just based on the available supply in that region. Say that we are in a shortage situation for Central Maui system, which we would be if we don't continue conserving water and developing new source. That kind of a shortage declaration should prioritize if we are in a true water shortage, what are the priority uses? The courts have established some of those that we need to be consistent with. So that includes, for our system, domestic needs, mainly household uses, drinking water, etc. And then other protected uses, Native Hawaiian rights, water to remain in streams, etc. But there's also, domestic can be broader. I mean, we do need to maintain fire flow and water to the hospitals and whatnot. So we are actually working with a consultant now to develop more of a shortage plan that prioritizes to set when we are in a water shortage, even hypothetical in the future, how do we categorize those priority uses, both on the demand side, what do we ask a resort to do versus a single family home, and what do we do on the supply side of operation and whatnot. So, thanks for that.
So I think the 8 million gallons a day additional water need, that's very critical and key factor here. So by what time are you calculating that that's needed, and at what level of population growth?
That has been predicted to be needed by year 2035, with about half of that needed a couple of years from now. The demand projections really have to look at it from a low to high range. Obviously, it's multiple factors that impact what seasonal demand is and what it is to year to year. But we projected demand based on both the population growth rates for each individual community plan. So that's not something we made up in the Water Development Plan. They're really based on the community plan projections. Compare that against historic demand. What if you just had a trajectory of growth similar to what you had for the last 10 years? We did not consider conservation, tampering demand. That didn't impact demand. That was considered more as a supply option. If we have demand without any conservation, how much could we meet by more aggressive conservation? So that range of 8 MGD that's the base case, I would say. We had a second look at it to make sure that we are current. We're looking, obviously, the water development plan is a 20-year blueprint, and it looks at all water uses and needs, but for the department system, so how realistic is it? Have we been kind of on track over the last few years? So turns out we pretty much are still in that range, and the source needs by 2035.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Aloha, Eva. Thank you for your presentation. When you're speaking about exploring East Maui, can you just explain briefly the East Maui consent decree, just to kind of put that?
Sure. The county settled with various plaintiffs back in 2003, I believe. There was a challenge to an original plan to develop wells in high aquifer. That EIS was challenged. So the settlement, so to say, was the East Maui consent decree, where the county agreed to consider various criteria before really coming back with a new plan for developing source in that aquifer. So that includes looking carefully at any other available resources, surface or groundwater outside that particular aquifer system. So there's sort of like a list of criteria to address, including a plan for stream restoration in East Maui. So if there were easier available supply than pursuing that strategy, we sure would, because there is not, there's a lot of community concerns still about that strategy. So I think we are really carefully and diligently looking at all those, the needs of the East Maui consent decree to really determine if it's going to be viable and how much is going to be available from there.
Thank you.
Everett?
Thank you for being here. What was the last well developed by the county?
On Maui Island in general? Put me on the spot. Wailuku Well 2, probably. Considering we have 2 ongoing now, one in Waihe'e and one for EL, but the last completed one must have been Wailuku Well 2 in Aquifer.
And that was developed by DWX?
It was a public-private partnership.
Okay. And you said you have 2 ongoing. Are they being drilled now, or are they being looked at? Or?
One in Waihe'e being drilled, Waihe'e Aquifer being drilled now. One is a replacement well in Aquifer being permitted now. Okay.
When water meters are purchased, either by a residential user or commercial, there's a source development fee component, transmission and storage components. What is the balance of the source development funds that have been collected over the years?
Oh, I don't know that off the top of my head. I'll get back to you.
And does it go into the general fund, or is it segregated?
So that's restricted funds. The water system development fee, as you correctly say, has transmission and storage in the source portion. So those portions for source is restricted funds that cannot be used for source development.
Okay.
But I'm not sure what the balance is.
Would it be possible to check on the balance?
I
and
don't.
get back? Great, thank you.
Does your department work with wastewater?
We are separate departments, but I don't think we collaborate as much as we should. There's definitely room for improved collaboration with the Department of Environmental Management.
What is do you have any plan to reuse water? I noticed that 80% of the wastewater system is all liquid. And at one time, I was looking at the hotels using reused water. Is there any sort of a plan where you're sticking your nose in that direction?
The Water Department really supports increasing both the right now there's an opportunity for commercial properties to hook up to available recycled water. So we support whether it is making that requirement a little stricter, so there's more incentive to use recycled water where it's available, even using department funds and loan opportunities, if that is a constraint to expanding recycled water use. So we do have, there's strategies in the water use development plan that is proposing maximizing R1 use where it's available.
Your thoughts about mandating that hotels reuse water? Use our reuse water on this plan.
The plan doesn't distinguish which type of use is more than commercial. So currently, county code has a requirement for when you are within 100 feet of an available R1 supply. We would like to see that beefed up, so to say, so there's a little more incentive on the developer to prepare and hook up the R1 system if there's available supply in that region, whether that is in Wailea or North Kihei.
We see in this time a drop and a water shortage. Does the Department of Water Supply purchase any water from EMI?
Not for South Maui, for upcountry.
You know how much you pay? Because the upcountry people have a shortage.
I believe it's 6 cents per 1,000 gallons for Wailoa ditch water from EMI. And that's for upcountry system. It does not supply South Maui.
Thank you.
I think it was Mike first and then Everett.
Mahalo for coming to our meeting this evening and giving the presentation. I think we all basically agree that South Valley is a desert climate. You know, if you define what a desert is, this is it. I would say for the last 20 years, I think we've gotten consistent comment from the various water directors that the EO aquifer was almost at last gasp. It was always like, if we use a little bit more water, we're going to be in trouble. Yet, years go by and we get way more development, and more development means we must be using more water. And unfortunately, I think that gives the public a false sense of security. Oh, like the boy that cried wolf. In your opinion, how close are we to being engaged with the EO aquifer?
Well, we watch the health of the aquifer through various means. We have USGS maintaining monitor wells, so we want to know what chloride levels, if they change, if water levels change. We're looking at how our pumpage is distributed, because it changes seasonally and with increased demand, of course, as well. So we see certain trends, and I mean personally, I'm worried long term. That's why I kind of really emphasize that we really like to see reduced pressure on the aquifer. It's not that I see the damage to aquifer now, but we can't continue relying on it as the main workhorse. We need to distribute pumpage outside of the Waihe aquifer. And unfortunately, it's not that many options in the region. So kind of like the best fruit has been picked, the cheapest fruit has been picked, so we have to be more creative and we have to go further away from the area where we have planned growth, where land use plans are dictating growth to occur. So that said, I mean, conservation has a huge part to play. Maximizing alternative sources, whether that's recycled water or direct potable reuse and whatnot, are now interesting. And what I mentioned about haiku water, that a contentious strategy, but we don't have that many options to go. So that's where we're at. There hasn't been a lot of development outside EO on the Waihe aquifer because there's not that many available options.
Mahalo.
Everett?
As a follow-up to Wayne's question regarding R1 water being transported to Wailea and the hotel areas, whose budget would that fall in? Would that fall in wastewater division or the water department?
You said R1 water
Or
recycling.
effluent water going out to Wailea. Whose budget would that fall in? If the water line would be extended, from the sewer treatment plant out towards Wailea so that the hotels, as Wayne mentioned, could use that water for irrigation. Would that be in the water department's budget or would that be in wastewater?
Yeah, so that traditionally has fallen within Department of Environmental Management. We completely have separate budgets. We have no general funds, right? We're self-sufficient, rate funded, but there are opportunities to use loans and grants, state revolving funds from the state that's not available to DEM to help subsidize or pay for some of those expansions. So that's one of the strategies we're saying in the water development plan, that we should explore that if funding is one of the constraints.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Mahalo, and thank you for being here. Is the EL aquifer under state control?
Yes, the aquifer was designated groundwater management area back in 2003.
To your knowledge, is the EL aquifer impaired?
You mean impaired in terms of water quality, quantity?
Are we over pumping it?
We are not over pumping it. We're pumping it well, believes, below sustainable yield, which is 20 million gallons a day, what is established by the Commission of Water Resource Management. We're pumping between 15 and 16, so it's quite a bit of buffer, but that's just one measurement. You know, that assumes that you have really optimized pumpage throughout the aquifer with many little straws, so you're not overdrawing anywhere or creating some upconing of salt water. So that's why this, you know, we maintain multiple monitor wells to track what's happening with the water levels, the transition zone between salt water and fresh water, what's happening with chloride levels or salt saline waters in individual wells. Those are measurements of overall aquifer health.
I got the impression that we're overworking the EL aquifer from your presentation.
I'm concerned about the continued trend of we can't continue to increase pumping close to sustainable yield because the changes we see already from climate change is drier. So even though the trend is slow, I see water levels changing and chloride increasing. So I don't see us being as a crisis right now, but I would really like to see relief, not depending so hard on the aquifer. If we have a couple of dry years, you know, we could see that trend changing quickly.
Chair, just a couple more questions. When was the last time we measured the sustainable yield of the Kamaole aquifer?
That's the Commission of Water Resource Management that does that. They updated that in 2019.
And what is it now?
11 million gallons a day.
In 2019, the sustainable yield was determined to be 11 million gallons per day?
Yeah, the Commission revised sustainable yield for all aquifer systems statewide, so they look at it, you know, with different scrutiny at different systems. Some of them are very specific based on scientific studies, some are more guesstimates because there's really no available data.
Are you looking at East Maui as a major resource for water for South Maui?
Available sustainable yield in East Maui is higher than it is regionally here. Very little of that water has been withdrawn to date. It's been looked at for years, but it hasn't really hasn't increased much over the last.
Do you anticipate having to work through the East Maui Water Authority? Do you plan to do any resource diversion of water to South Maui or Central Maui?
I really don't know what the role will be of East Maui Water Authority. That hasn't been established yet.
And just a final comment. A lot of my friends in Nawaiʻea, Waʻeu, and Waiheʻe, and East Maui wonder why South Maui gets so much water diverted from those areas. And they would like to see us be more conscientious about conserving that water, especially considering we live in a dry area. And I know my ancestors would be shocked to see how we use water in South Maui in such a wasteful manner. Thank you for being
Cody?
So I know in the past, South Maui had their own wells and were more reliant on these wells. And I was wondering what does aquifer look like in South Maui?
The aquifer underlying here where we are, Kamole Aquifer, is primarily used for irrigation. There's very little potable water coming out of Kamole Aquifer. Below 500 feet or so, water tends to be brackish. So this aquifer goes all the way up to Keokea area, Department of Hawaiian Homelands area. So at that elevation, the water quality isn't better, but it's been very few wells drilled to really confirm, and it can be very site specific. The other thing is that a lot of the wells in this aquifer they're pumping, but they're not reporting the pumpage to the State Water Commission, so we don't have a good handle on how much is actually used out of that sustainable yield. The other thing is that this region, looking at climate models, even different climate models, doesn't have a very good prognosis for South Maui in terms of groundwater recharge. Drier areas assumed to get drier, so I will not count on the sustainable yield for this aquifer to remain at what it is today.
Brennan?
Is it possible that private landowners, let's go say above Pi'ilani Highway, is it possible private landowners can just create their own well and
Yes.
Yeah, because we kind of feel that a lot of that water is being depleted and not reaching the ocean. Because all of South Maui at one point in time had much vegetation and forestation up Mauka. This whole region was sustainable and flourishing, fish pond, wetlands and all that, right? But that's what we feel. We feel that some of these private landowners tapping those resources. The new high school, I hear they got 2 wells up there. So South Maui get wells, and then I agree with you. A lot of it is brackish, especially when we go more towards the Kai this way. Because where I live, a lot of the old homes all have wells, but they're more brackish now because of sea level rising and all that. So hard to keep track of these private owners up Mauka that do tap these wells, because it should make its route all the way down to the ocean, and that's what I'm feeling, that a lot of these wells are being depleted and not reaching the ocean. Hard to keep track. No, but hard to keep track, right? Hard to find.
Yeah. So all individual well owners, whether private, municipal, commercial, all are required to report their pumpage, not to us, but to the State Water Commission. But it's kind of a catch-up game where in some areas the reporting is very poor, and other areas, it's fine. But for Kama'ole, it's really not that complete. So I don't think neither the Water Department or the State Water Commission have really a good handle on how much is used and when.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. I had a question. In the past, there's always been talk about converting salt water to fresh water. Is there any headway, or is that still a topic that we should look at?
Desalinating, desalination can be using brackish water or seawater, pretty much the same technology, RO membrane technology, but the cost is very different, of course, because there are much higher salt levels in seawater. We have looked at it for various areas. For central system, which includes South Maui, of course, we had a consultant do a study quite a few years back, and we asked for a kind of a quick and dirty update for the water use development plan to really see are there new, has the technology evolved significantly, what are the energy costs, disposal options, etc. The consultant found that it wasn't, of course, the technology has evolved, there's better, the type of RO membrane technology can now doesn't have as much concentrate left to dispose of, like a brine disposal is a huge environmental concern. And it's expensive, of course, compared to conventional water resources if you have other cheaper alternatives. So we have looked at that and we continue to consider it in a sort of, I wouldn't say like a last resort, but because of the cost, you really want to consider if it's feasible for a specific area.
Okay, any further questions for the presenter? Okay, thank you. I'd like to open up at this time for public testimony. And remember, 3 minutes per topic.
From Marcy or from up there? From right there.
Aloha, my name is Lucy Ndine, and nice to see you all again. It's been so long. I'm here to offer a few comments about section 2.3 as it has to do with water resources. Of course, the two policy statements that you have here are good ones, nothing wrong with them. Certainly, our existing community plans all have language promoting native plants, reducing water use, but I think we need something in here, if we want to do what other municipalities have done that want to live within their water means, there needs to be some percentages or some goals. And like Los Angeles, for instance, where I was born, has had to figure out every way to conserve water possibly because they don't have additional sources of water. They're kind of maxed out. And they have done this, and their population has grown, but the water use per capita has shrunk. We need to have goals like that in our community plan. Whether it's a visionary goal of by the completion of, I guess this is a 20-year plan, so by 2045, water use in the South Maui area will have decreased per capita water use by 35%. If we don't reach that goal, it's not the end of the world. There's many goals in community plans that we don't reach right away, but it at least says that this is something we're looking at trying. Our water use and development plan sets an 8% conservation goal. It's very minimum given the current conditions, and it wasn't set knowing the current conditions, to be fair to the plant, the staff at the water department. It was set when the plan was being drafted in 2016, 2017. And we know that things are very different today. So also, we need to have a strategy. Should it be that the very largest water users, especially luxury developments, should be asked to identify their own water sources? I mean, look at Waikapoo Town. You know, Mr. Atherton has stepped up and developed his own water sources. He knows Iao Aquifer can't take the additional burden. He did a responsible thing. He got everything permitted. Should that be something that we put forward as a strategy? I think so. I hear Vernon's concern about the Mauka wells and the effect they have on the ocean. So we need to take that into account. Right now, most of our Mauka wells are golf course wells. Could we water the golf courses with effluent and use water in the aquifer that's slightly brackish, treat it, and use it for humans? Also, please keep in mind, most of the water that goes to South Maui is not used for humans, it's used for landscape. How can we make that different and have more water for humans and less water for landscapes? Mahalo.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Daniel?
Hello, Lucian. Thank you for being here. So you would like to see more metrics, measurable goals in water use? Like, I like your idea about reducing per capita water use by a certain percentage at a certain time in the future. you have any other specific suggestions for specific metrics?
Well, I think prioritizing fresh water, wherever it's sourced, whether it comes from EAL or whether it comes from someday from Haiku, prioritizing that for human use. And so that's where you look at the reduction in the amount of per capita use, because humans don't use that much water. But landscapes use a lot of water. And that's how places like Arizona and Los Angeles, they pay people to put in very lovely rock and cactus gardens. And they're very aesthetic, you know, but they get incentives for not using water. Also, I'd like to see a policy that says that we're just not approving projects that have a swimming pool with every lot or every other lot. I mean, those days are over. We shouldn't be thinking we're living in them. My opinion, but I think there's a lot of scientific heads that would shake in the same direction. Thank you for allowing me to clarify.
Any further questions for testifier? Thank you. Next testifier.
Hello, my name is Peter Cannon. I come with two messages for you from the Malaya Village Association. I'm last minute asked to come and give the place to Pani Bori, who's a co-chair of the Malaya Wastewater Committee with myself. The second topic for me is going to be the disaster preparedness, which I'd like to start with because it's very brief. Back in the day when Howley Road was first built and there were homes there, the plantation had a road between the mudflats and the clay fields. And the residents were allowed to use that road at their own risk. And there's even a gate near still there, near the electrical plant, and a sign saying revocable at any time, permission to use, that kind of thing. There's only one way out of Malaya. And if a fire came or a disaster came where we all had to get out of there at one time, we could be toast, especially if it was a fire and the way out was blocked. We've talked to Mahipono. They're willing to help us and use that old road again. Most of it's there. The end closest to the electrical plant is covered with kiawe, and so is the gate. But we've had those conversations with Mahipono and with some of the council members. Secondly, I spoke last time about wastewater and the reasons why Malaya Bay has lost all of its coral. And the main reason was the biggest reason is the sediment and the brown water events. But number two is the wastewater. So the MBA has for 4.5 years now been working on finding a solution to replace all of our injection wells with a regional plant. And I'm happy to report that thanks to Kelly King, the County Council has appropriated $9.5 million for this plant. We have reviewed dozens of possible vendors for this, which we're going to hand over to the county. The county mayor did apply for SRF funds, state revolving funds, and we had a meeting with the health department and the EPA where the head of the wastewater division actually said to the EPA, this is my number one issue for 2023. We want to get rid of these injection wells, get the life back into Malaya. Happy to report that interesting to be here on the day with the water presentation. My grandfather was the one who built the artesian wells for the plantation. I've actually been down the one that's below Pukalani. It's amazing. Lost my train of thought. Hold on. I'm sorry, I'll stop there.
Any clarifying questions? Kyoki?
Hello, Peter. Thank you for coming tonight testifying. Your conversations with Mahipono regarding that the road, you're talking about the old road that went to the power plant, yeah? To what extent did they talk about if they would be willing to clear it? Because we all know it's pretty overgrown now, yeah?
They're willing to give access, okay? And the last thought was that Mahipono was actually offered 10 acres of land for the regional plant and also for a green belt for windbreak and fire break above the village. And I'm happy to report that we know that we can't use all of our R1 water coming out of this plant. So we have to have a green belt to eat up the rest of it. But all of our landscaping needs are covered. And we computed 6 million gallons of fresh water a year would be, which is almost a day's worth, from what I'm hearing, would be saved by using our R1 water within the community.
So last time you testified, I think I remember we were talking about the canal stream and its diversion. I didn't get to ask you the last time, but where are you with any talks about it, like re-diverting that with Mahipono? Because its natural flow would go through Mahipono land, correct?
Yes.
Towards the west end of the wetland there, right near Haycraft. Any talks about that, where that will go?
Well, we haven't had those talks except to urge the county to do something. There's actually appropriated $100,000 to study the diversion of Canal Stream back to where it went in the first place. The plantation has said, we'll use the water, we'll take the water. I think their plan is orchards in that area. If you look carefully on Google Earth, you can see Canal Stream and where it left off. The plantation was using the water in the cane fields. So it's, and it is the biggest river and the one that comes down that flood control area and causes more damage to Malaya than any other stream. All that upland water comes down that one diverted stream. And by the way, I didn't say last time is there's a Hulcane Road across that stream, and the plantation has put in a 4-foot pipe, and the road goes over this 4-foot pipe. Imagine all the water from the Mauka, from the road, trying to fit through a 4-foot pipe. It doesn't work. So that's why we have the brown water events in Malaya. It never was that way before they diverted the highway water and built that culvert that took all the diversion away.
Yeah, correct. Of course, because I grew up there too, I'm aware of these problems. And this is just a comment, not a question, but I remember back in 1980 being a young child and going through about a week-long Kona storm that dumped rain, closed the Poly Highway. We were stoked. We were riding our BMX bikes on the Poly. Rocks were falling, but even that storm
no brown water
did not overwhelm that particular stream. So that diversion of canal, you're correct, is overwhelming the current infrastructure.
Yes.
And now they're backpedaling, making these plateau-like catchments, and it's still not working. But thank you. Yeah. Well.
Hey, Daniel.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Cannon. I like when you come because I always learn something new that I didn't know before. So I'm happy to hear that Mahipono is willing to give up 10 acres of land, or donate 10 acres of land. Do you know, have they decided where that would be?
Well, that's another reason to be here and testify, because if you're talking about managed retreat and saving some property, Mauka of Holy Road for moving back, we have to think about where will the green belt be and where will the property reserved for moving back might be. So that's really a question for the planning group to think about.
So it's still to be determined.
Correct.
And then as far as the water treatment plant, would that be a private water treatment plant?
Negative. The money is appropriated to do it.
Yeah.
We actually, I'm going to use the word profit. If when Maui invests in this $9.5 million project, and they take the rates of the sewer payers, you will make money over the period of time that plant is running. It will cost you less to run that plant than it is in the money you receive from sewer payments. We did a back of the envelope comparison of what it costs per toilet in Malaya, this plant, compared to the new Central Maui plant that they were talking about, and I'm not going to repeat how much cheaper we were than when because to me the number was astounding.
And my last question, do you have an estimate of what the total cost would be to build this water treatment plant?
$9.5 million is our closest estimate at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Next testifier.
Good evening, Larry Stevens. Where I come from, they say that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. So in the hopes of avoiding that, I have a few things to throw on the table. One, the costs of desalination are coming down very steadily. There's a lot of technology that's coming on board. In particular, the use of renewable energy as the energy source for driving desalination can really give us a chance to lower the cost of that activity if that's the way we want to go. Second thing, there's a lot of places that are considering to go closed loop with their water. So instead of using all their water just for irrigation, but be able to put it into the water supply again after you've treated it properly. Various jurisdictions are doing that, I think, in a water-stressed environment like ours. We may have to consider that at some point. Third point, we only reuse about half of the water that comes out of the Kihei wastewater treatment plant right now. It goes up and down with the seasons. So there's a huge amount of opportunity to switch to use more of that recycled water. And we need to push hard to get the large resorts and all kinds of other places to be more aggressive about using that water. Fourth point, no, I'm losing my train of thought. There's a lot of chances to increase conservation, particularly in the resort areas with the golf courses and so on, by improving the quality of the soil. Our group is working with McKenna Resort, the county, and various other landowners to see what kind of improvements that we can get and just the amount of water that we need in order to keep the landscaping going. And I think we're going to have a lot of good news to report over the next couple of years about that, about using that technology. I think it's going to have a lot of good impact in lots of places around the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to testifier? Wayne?
Who is your group back here working with the resorts?
We work with the landscaping departments in lots of different resorts. Our group is the Maui Niue Marine Resource Council. And we have a program we call Reef-Friendly Landscaping, which we're trying to get various resorts to adopt right now. We just certified the Four Seasons at Lanai as the first resort to achieve what we call gold level, which is not completely adopting the program, but it's the second level of adoption of that program. And that's our first Gold Award winner, and we expect to have others within the next year or two.
Are you getting any resistance from the resorts here in Wailea?
We have some that are quite interested, some that are not so interested. So if you guys can put in your programs and your decisions and actions and so on, things that would encourage the resorts to work with us, that would be lovely. Because we're willing to step up and bring technology, bring expertise to the program, to these resorts. And we hope to have quantified information. We don't have much quantification yet, a little too early. But we should have data soon that we can use to demonstrate that this stuff works.
Further questions to testify? Daniel?
Hi Larry, nice to see you. I'm shocked that the resorts aren't working with your organization.
Some are.
Some are, okay, not. All right, I'm glad to hear.
The winner so far on Maui Island is McKenna Resort.
Oh, that's good news. I'm very happy to hear that. Now, as far as desalination, and you said the costs are coming down, and there's also reverse osmosis, right?
That's one technique. That's the most commonly used technique today.
Yeah. So the question that always comes up is, what are you going to do with all the leftover brine, from that? I know one of the countries that does a lot of desal is Israel, and so maybe we can learn something from them. But yeah, I'd be interested in hearing your comments on the brine.
So the brine is a big issue. It's nasty stuff. And the only techniques that I've heard discussed are dispersion. So you take it way out of the ocean and you spread it around. Now, does that have detrimental effects? I think it depends a lot on how you do it. But you're right, Israel and other Middle Eastern countries where they have a lot of desert, a lot of sand, but no water. They're getting big on desalination as well. So I think this technology is going to continue to advance pretty quickly. And some of it doesn't even involve complex technology. Just using solar energy and evaporating it has been shown to work in some cases. So there's a lot happening there.
Further questions to testifier? Kyoki.
Hello, mahalo for your testimony. This byproduct, this brine, what are to your knowledge, the main components that are detrimental in this brine?
Well, if you have highly concentrated salt water, that can damage marine life. If you just put it in the ocean and you just have a pipe that goes onto the reef. So you have to get it out and you have to spread it around. Otherwise, it can be very toxic to coral, to lemur, to fish, and so on, not to mention people.
So just primarily the salt.
Think about the Dead Sea. That's a highly briny water body, and it's kind of fun to swim in it because if you stand up and float, you only go down to your chest. But we don't want that here.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. And next testifier. Okay. Crickets.
Okay. Hi, Doug Ballard. Recently relocated from Arizona, and I can attest, I was a planning and development director for the city of Chandler, Arizona, and we would not allow any golf courses to be built unless they used reclaimed water. We would not allow any water features to be constructed unless they used reclaimed water. We also had a pretty aggressive reclaimed water impact fee system. And we also required developers to bond to extend the infrastructure, the distribution lines for reclaimed water. So I just encourage you to look at as was said earlier, look at some of those options that other communities are using. The other comment I had, if I could, had to do with, can you take that for a second? With a policy that I read here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on page 42 of the draft plan, 2.3.2 sub C and sub D. Those seem to have been weakened a bit, and I don't, I haven't been engaged until now, and so I don't know the reasons why. But what it reads is, or what it used to read, was for redevelopment and new developments within the sea level rise exposure area, developers must, and under C it said, not hold the county of Maui liable for any and all future costs, and it goes on. And that's been changed to make efforts to not hold the county liable. And I don't really know what that means for a developer to make efforts and how that actually works in the real world. So that's just kind of a question, I guess. And on sub D, it would read, developers must, what it used to read was, recognize that permit approvals from the county of Maui will be conditioned to prohibit future shoreline hardening for their property or project. And that's been changed to make efforts to waive the ability to ever request shoreline hardening. So it seems a bit mushy, and I'm not quite sure what that means either. And so those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Mike?
Thank you for coming and bringing ideas from other locations. That's always helpful. That seems to be the challenge we have here with making more and better use of our R1 water, is that the county says we can't afford to run a mile of line down to that location that would be used. So I think you said that in Arizona, that if a developer wanted to, they had to show that they were going to use it, and did they also have to pay for the infrastructure to bring it to them?
Correct. They extend we had a fairly good, we had an advantage in as South Chandler was largely agricultural, and it was changing and rapidly changing. All that's gone now, it's all developed. So that allowed us, and that's, I think, somewhat true here in Maui too. In some cases you have a blank slate. But that allowed us to extend, to create a distribution system. If a development was was developing and the distribution line was not to their property, they would be, and they wanted to have a golf course, for example, or a major water feature, they would be required to extend that infrastructure or bond for the extension of that infrastructure when other properties that would tap into that line would come on and development would occur with those properties. So that would allow us to continually expand our wastewater, reclaimed water distribution system. The other thing that's really important too, and I don't know the answer to this either, is we had they still do, a very high level of tertiary treatment. But there's always a challenge because reclaimed water often has lots of salts and things like that in them. And so when we first started reclaimed water distribution and use for more lush landscaping, for example, there were some problems with salt tolerance with some species. But that all worked itself out, and Chandler has a very robust, and other cities do too, I'm sure. All I can speak of is Chandler's. And then again, looking at your impact fee structure, I understand that the county has impact fees, but looking at your impact fee structure and making sure that what you're charging supports your plans to expand the system. If you're not charging enough, then you're not going to have the money to expand the system to reach these properties. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions to testifier? Daniel?
Hi, Doug. Is it Ballard?
It is.
Did you say you were a former planning director from Arizona?
Yes, yes.
You are a former planning director?
Yes.
And did you say that the planning, I just want to clarify, because I think I may have missed some of what you said. The planning department is it Chandler?
Chandler, Arizona, yeah.
Restricted, what did they restrict? Golf courses?
If a developer wanted, and this happened a number of times, golfing is big in Arizona, but if a developer in Chandler wanted to build a golf course as part of their development, we were developing square miles and all this kind of stuff. They could not do that unless they used reclaimed water. If reclaimed water wasn't available, they couldn't build the golf course. Unless they would either pay to extend the lines or bond. No, actually, I think I'm misspeaking there. I don't think they could do a freshwater, a potable water irrigation system on any golf courses being permitted in Chandler. It had to be reclaimed water. So that limited new golf course development to areas where reclaimed water was available.
And what about things like water features, swimming pools?
Same thing.
They have to use reclaimed water?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, same thing.
And then your landscaping, what were your, for landscaping, was it all zero-scape landscaping, or was it reclaimed water again for landscaping?
If it was reclaimed water, we didn't really worry about zero-scape so much because we wanted people to use the reclaimed water. It lowered our costs ultimately in terms of what we had to do with it in terms of injection or whatever else. And my good friend was the director of water and wastewater, but I don't know all the details. I just kind of know a little bit about the big picture of what went on. But I lost my train of thought now too.
Well, that's okay. It's nice to have a planning director from another state share, former planning director share how you handle water usage. So thank you so much.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Further questions to testifier? Thank you. Next testifier.
You need a little star on the floor there where you stand. Thank you for having me, Kelly King, Maui resident for over 40 years. I think we had a lot of good input from people who have been involved in the water issues for a while, so I just kind of wanted to back up what some of them were saying. And the first one, of course, is reclaimed water. So if you're looking at goals to put in as policies, you know, I thought that was a great goal that Lucienne offered as far as making a percentage of usage reduction, but also consider that if we're going to need 8 million gallons a day more, that, you know, maybe set a goal of a percentage of that, you know, and I'm just throwing out a number like 50% needs to come from reclaimed water. And set timeline goals for those issues, because we have, there's a lot of opportunity right now with state surplus money and federal infrastructure money coming in. And so the other thing I wanted to offer or just suggest to this body, because you guys are asking some really good questions and making some really intelligent comments, but I think this process, if it takes 6 to 8 months and another 6 months for the Planning Commission, another year for the Council to approve this, it's going to be a long time before these things get in. So as soon as some of these discussions, I think, need to make their way into the heads of the people who are making funding decisions now, because we're going to only have like another 2 or 3 years probably of this big infrastructure money being available to us. And we need to get those requests starting to come in now. So as you're talking about reclaimed water, recycled water, the money to put that piping in could be coming now. You know, we shouldn't wait for 2 years for all this to get done. And I wanted to ask, and I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I just wanted to ask if, because I know DEM doesn't work closely with DWS, with the Department of Water Supply, but you know, what water are you counting? Are you counting the money, the water from DEM in your inventory? You know, the recycled water from wastewater treatment facilities, or okay, so that kind of needs to be part of the mix. Is how much are we getting from that? So if there's a goal of recycling a certain amount of our increased water usage, then we need to know how much that is, and that there's too much siloing right now between DEM and Department of Water Supply. I just wanted to mention desalination. I'm glad to hear that the costs are coming down. My husband actually worked on a solar desalination project about 25 or 30 years ago using Gore-Tex technology. And so I think that you know, the advancement in that technology is important. I think there's things we could do with the salt, because I actually just was at the Red Sea in Egypt when I was at COP27, and bought some Red Sea salt. So that's what you do with the salt when you take it out of the water, is you clean it up and sell it. And then the last thing I wanted to say was, just kind of backing up what Doug said, is try to keep the statements in the community plan as strong as possible, because these are things that are going to they're going to be people that are going to be coming for community plan amendments and trying to get exemptions from them anyway. So don't put the exemptions in there up front, because then those statements become meaningless. You know, when you're trying to do something, or you're making an effort to do something. When I was on the State Board of Education, we used to call those weasel words, because you're just allowing a lot of escape from some of these policies. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to share with you. And then again, thank everybody for being here. It's great to see all 13 people here.
Question from Daniel. Clarifying question.
Yes, I had a clarifying question. Is your name Kelly King?
Yes, it is.
So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
You had a question for our presenter, and I couldn't quite hear what it was. I would like to make sure that question is answered. Could you repeat what
Yeah, when we're looking at the inventory of how much water we use and we have available in any given community, I was just asking if that includes whatever's coming out of DEM from the wastewater treatment facilities that's being cleaned up and being able to be reused as R1, or you know, they're trying to get to point where they can put it back on the ground. So I was asking if that was part of their inventory, and I think Ava was saying, no, it's not. So, you know, we need to get together, we need the two departments to get together so we have a more realistic view of how much water we actually have access to.
Chair, after we finish questioning the testifier, can we direct that question to our presenter to answer?
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to say too that I didn't get to is, you know, we should be looking at water storage too for the times when we have excess water. We have all these storm surges and we're not recapturing any of that water. So, you know, there's a lot of people that used to always say in the past, there's all the water we need, it's just not in the right places. So storing it for reuse somewhere where we need it, I think is something that we really need to start looking at.
Any further questions for the testifier? Mike?
Mahalo for coming out and Kelly and giving us your input. Just to clarify, when you were saying in the beginning, of course, what we're doing here is working on a community plan, but I think your point was that all this extra money, if we can call it that, in the federal and state, can be expended, needs to be expended now before it goes away, so that just as that one issue that we were talking about is extending the R1 water lines, putting it in the plan as finalized 5 or 6 years from now, now the money's gone, so that doesn't do any good. So you're urging the community to testify to council and to contact the administration to try and jump on it now, as apart from what the CPAC is doing.
Well, and even to get the message out, if the CPAC starts proposing, you know, some kind of a goal, like a percentage of reclaimed water, you know, reduction in use of water per capita, and gets that message out there, so that, because I don't think the money, the federal money doesn't necessarily have to be spent in the next couple of years. It has to be appropriated in the next couple of years, I think, because, you know, we know we have it now for a couple of years. We don't know what's going to happen after the next presidential election. So getting that message out that these policies are being looked at so that our administration and maybe our county council can start, you know, appropriating funding for expanding recycled water, reclaimed water, because a lot of it is really just putting in the infrastructure, because the water's there and we can treat it if we have the infrastructure to deliver it. But I'm just afraid that, you know, that if we take too long getting through this whole process before anyone takes your proposals seriously and the things that people here are saying seriously, that we might miss our opportunity. But, you know, I just, as an example, my husband and I, our company, Pacific Biogen, was working on an appropriation that was first approved in the 21 federal budget. Then they plussed it up in the 22. We haven't spent any of it yet. We're still trying to figure out the agreement, but once it gets sequestered, it's there. Once it gets appropriated, it's there. We don't have to spend it right away, but we have to get it appropriated.
Wow.
Any further questions for the testifier? Thank you. Next testifier. Okay, closing public testimony. And we need to, at this point, go into executive session, which means that we'll have to ask all the members of the audience to leave at this time.
Just don't want to get too far ahead, but in order to go into executive session, you would need a motion and a vote of 2/3 of the members present. And I would like to go over the purpose I would be requesting executive session, because HRS requires that. Under HRS 92-5, an executive session can be called to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. I wanted to address the commission on a couple of the policies that were discussed in your last meeting, but that are also still on the current on your current agenda today. And that would be the purpose of the requested executive session, to discuss several policies that are there. Again, you would need a vote of 2/3 of the members, so I think you would need 8 votes in order to go to executive session.
So you heard the reason for the executive session. Will someone make a motion? Daniel makes a motion.
Second.
Everett moved? Wayne seconded, but who made the motion?
No, I didn't make the motion. I was going to ask a question.
Okay, so Jennifer makes the motion and Wayne seconds. Discussion?
Chair, I was hoping our presenter could answer the question by one of our testifiers before people leave. And I don't know if they're coming back. Instead of waiting till after executive session.
Oh, Chair, if you want to have that quick question answered before that, that's fine. I think that's fine too. It's up to the chair, I think, though.
Okay, so this proposal, the motion is to go back to discussion between the members and the presenter.
I mean, that was a question to Department of Water Supply. I don't know if it was answered or not, but I mean, it sounds like
Yes.
you wanted to have the Department of Water Supply answer.
I think he was going
Question from the
to answer it. But I think there's a motion on the floor. I didn't make the motion to go into executive session, and I think there was a second. So I think we have to handle that motion.
Well, the motion is on the floor. If you want to table it right now and then move it from the table again if you like. But if you want to be a little less formal, I don't think there's a problem with having. If the question's going to be very brief to answer, I think you could do that if you really wanted to.
Leave it to the discretion of the chair.
Right.
I'm all for informality. Get it done. Are you able to answer the question?
Thank you. The other question was whether R1 recycled water was accounted for in the water use inventory overall for water use development plan and projections. And yes, so we're looking at all conventional reported water uses with this groundwater, surface water, and production of recycled water, and projecting what recycled water will be available in the future, assuming we're going to have more wastewater available. So that was considered.
Okay, so any further discussion about the motion to go into executive session? Since we need two-thirds majority, I'll ask for a vote. So those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so I'll ask the members of the public to step out. And everyone else, just out of consideration for Michael's time, let's go straight into this executive session. Okay, just stand up, but don't leave the table.